Are you? Who's up? Who's up? Gary, you're up next. Okay, you are difficult to stop.
I am difficult to stop.
But I will have a traffic light system for you, especially the next time.
It's too late now.
Yes, which will involve unplugging the microphone.
That wouldn't make a difference. It's still in.
There's a microphone there, or if you're happy to come up, you can speak up to here, Gary, whichever you feel comfortable with.
I don't mind either way, but I think this is on.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah,
that's definitely on. Gary, can I just do a quick introduction of you? Given that we spoke earlier today that you are the director of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health for Northern Ireland, and that you had a very interesting discussion about the wider impacts of this. So if I can try and keep you to roughly 10 minutes as well, that would be good too. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Basil, and thanks for the invite to be here. As Basil has indicated, I am going to talk predominantly, as you might expect, about the health-related impacts of this. That is, so far, what we actually know about them, which is not very much, because the evidence is really simply not there. And I'll refer to that at several points through this presentation. I should also say at the outset that when I talk about health, I don't mean simply the absence of disease. I mean a more complete state of social, mental and physical well-being. If you like, quality of life and well-being are as important as the absence of disease. So I just want to make that point at the very start. Peter has already showed you this slide, and it's certainly true to say that, and I want to make this point at the outset too, we recognise some of the potential benefits of fracking, particularly economically and socially for Northern Ireland. I think it's fair to say that many people see the extraction of shale gas as, a very viable alternative to dwindling oil supplies. You'll see there at the bottom of this slide a quotation from the BP Statistical Review of World Energy in 2009, where they said it's no secret anymore for every 9 barrels of oil we consume, we're discovering 1. So it's very clear that the global oil supplies are dwindling, and that arguably gas is actually a cleaner environmental alternative to oil. Managing Editor, Energy and Capital Investment Director Nick Hodge has recently called fracking the gold rush for gas, and certainly the evidence in the US is that this has become a widespread technique because it offers arguably better environmental alternatives to the use of oil and the extraction of oil. In Northern Ireland, Tamboran, the company who currently have the licence for exploratory drilling in counties Leitrim, Sligo and Fermanagh, estimate that based on their data thus far, there are enough reserves and supply in Northern Ireland for 50 years. And Northern Ireland, incidentally, is particularly vulnerable in terms of energy security. 99% of our energy is imported, as Peter has already alluded to. Of course, leaving aside for a moment the social and environmental impacts, the question is how much of that 50-year supply will remain in Northern Ireland, and that's my cynical view, given that this is a commercial operation and they will sell it on the open market to the highest bidder. And that leads me on to, or I'll come back to that in a moment. In terms of jobs, you can see that I've taken this data, by the way, from Tamboran themselves, so you can see that there is some significant economic benefits in terms of jobs. Tax revenues, direct employment, estimated 600 local jobs, and potential investment up to 6 billion. So I just want to make the point at the outset that clearly there are some positive benefits to this. And then there's bigger issues. I've already mentioned UK energy interdependence. And earlier in the debate this afternoon, fuel poverty, and indeed I would add to that, food poverty, are big societal health issues that are large. Well, fuel poverty is on the radar, food poverty is very much underneath it. The problem there is we can't quantify that exactly at the minute, but as Jonathan Parrott said, you need evidence tempered with what's blatantly obvious. And if we have 44% of our population in fuel poverty, I would suggest that we have at least 44% of our population in food poverty also. However, shale gas is not necessarily the answer to all of this. I think to suggest that's going to end fuel poverty and food poverty in Northern Ireland, for example, is slightly, dare I say it, naive. I think the issue is much bigger than that. But nonetheless, it could help in terms of reducing energy costs. But it is still a fossil fuel. And that's a point I want to make, and I think that's a key cornerstone of what I want to say. You'll see from this slide, and forgive the typo in the brackets on the first, at the first point, that should say an IPCC report has estimated that renewable energy could provide 77% of the world's energy supply by 2050 if it was backed by the right enabling policies. And here in the UK, the Committee on Climate Change have identified a total renewable resource 2.5 times our current electricity consumption. The point really is that our potential for renewable energy is substantial in these islands, and as yet it is largely untapped. And I would argue that that is not only economically and socially, but environmentally a better alternative to any fossil fuel in the longer term. These aspects, risks and considerations, again, are taken from Tamboran, and the point of showing you these is that there's very few of these that do not have some sort of health aspect to them. So I want to quickly take you through some of the more specific health considerations, and the first of those is water quality. And the potential risks here are really twofold: groundwater contamination, either chemical or methane, and surface water contamination via the leachate runoff, because essentially what goes down into the ground to fracture the rock has to come back up again. So the chemicals and any additives that are actually added to the water re-emerge, if you like, as liquor and have to be dealt with. Now, whilst again Tamboran have given an undertaking that they will not use any chemicals in Northern Ireland, the fact of the matter is that chemicals are a significant proponent in the fracking fluid in the US. Things like friction reducers, biocides, anti-corrosive agents, sequestration agents and hydrochloric acid are all used. Chemicals as mundane as soap, but also, sorry Peter, through to benzene, are widely used in fracking fluids in the US. There's a real problem around this at the minute because until this year the US government have not required the companies using the technology to declare what's in the fluid. So it's relatively unknown at the moment. The argument is that it's a trade secret, rather like the Coca-Cola trade secret, where they can't tell you the recipe because they'll have to kill you. Or make you drink Coke. But it's suffice to say that there have been anecdotal instances of groundwater contamination in the US as a result of chemical contamination. Air quality from a number potentially of different sources. Firstly, from the process known as flaring, which is really the release of excess gas from time to time, as the photo illustrates. The traffic, and I think this is quite profound, although again the evidence is simply not there in terms of what this is going to look like on the ground in Northern Ireland and Ireland when they get this site in operation. How many sites are we talking about? Where are they? Given the significant quantities of sand and water that have to be transported on a daily basis in large lorries, what's that going to look like on the ground here in Northern Ireland? And what are the implications in terms of air quality, both local and regional? Also VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and ground level ozone. And what even about things like odour? From leaks or the treatment of the water stroke slurry that comes back out of the ground. So there are some air quality issues to be considered. Noise, and I've separated these into two types. The drilling and other site works obviously are temporary, whilst the sites, when they're running in production, if you like, will have compressor stations and, as I've alluded to already, will have regular traffic to and from the site. Now, in a recent report that AEI have produced, commissioned by the European Commission and DG, they've actually made some interesting comments on noise, and this is literally just published in the last month or two. And I'll quote you from this. It's estimated that each well pad, assuming 10 wells per pad, would require 800 to 2,500 days of noisy activity during pre-production, covering groundworks and road construction, as well as the hydraulic fracking process. And these noise levels would need to be carefully controlled to avoid risks to health for members of the public. So I think there are, it's suffice to say, there are considerations in terms of noise from this process. And of course, what about the visual impacts? So in conclusion, our position on this really is that we need to proceed with caution, and indeed a well-known principle established in industrial and environmental pollution control, the precautionary principle, must remain the overriding principle for the UK and Ireland, I would suggest, at present. The evidence base as it relates to potential and actual environmental and human health must be kept under review and must inform policy and decision making. And this really, for me, is a key one. Environmental impact assessment as we move forward is widely accepted, and the Minister has alluded to the fact that that will take place. It has to be independent. In other words, let me spell that out. I don't think it's acceptable that an environmental impact assessment commissioned by Tamboran informs the policy-making process on this. It has to be independent. I took this quote from another piece of research published recently that a colleague provided me with, and I thought it summed it up quite nicely, particularly in terms of the health impacts. The fact of the matter is that there have been no major epidemiological studies carried out, and that, largely speaking, this process is so far a hugely calculated human toxicology experiment. We don't know is the simple answer. And finally, my very final comment, we need to get this all in balance, and there was some discussion about this afternoon. Sustainable development is about balancing not only our economy and our society, but our environment. In very simple terms, we have major issues in terms of energy dependence. We have major issues and challenges in our economy, but we have to move forward on the basis of a sustainable society, because we can't forget that it's not that the planet depends on us, we depend on it. Thank you.